The Senate to order. Sergeant Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, on this Tuesday, January 28th, we have Reverend Cleveland T. Mason of Perkins Square Baptist Church in Baltimore, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 40th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we have gathered at the State House for the great state of Maryland to invite your divine presence to abide here. As this legislative body convenes, we ask for your wisdom and discernment in all things. Guide the decisions that will be made today as these leaders seek to serve the people with justice and fairness. May these leaders please you as they work toward the common purpose of a better future. Our challenges are great, but help us to overcome. Doing what is right is not always convenient, but help us to do right because it matters. Grant us the genius of innovation and insight that will bless our state. Indeed, make this state a shining example for others to follow. By your blessed name, may we prevail. Amen.
Thank you, sir. That was wonderful. Thank you. Recognize the senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Pastor, so much. In times like this, prayer answers, all calls, and we're so grateful for you sharing with us this morning. Mr. President, I ask that we journalize the pastor's remark.
Without objection, most certainly we will journalize the invocation and thank the Reverend for being with us today. All right, has everyone recorded their presence? Almost. All right, the clerk will call the roll. Take the call, excuse me. I'll wake up. With 43 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Let's see, do we have a resolution? The senator from Howard County has a resolution. We have our guests. Yes, excellent.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. So today, I'm really pleased, and I hope you all help me welcome the Maryland School for the Deaf robotics team. And this is really exciting because this is the first time ever that the Maryland School for the Deaf have participated in this kind of activity, and they've been very successful. For those who don't know, the Maryland School for the Deaf has a couple campuses, one in Frederick and one in Howard County, and they've been around since 1868, which is pretty extraordinary that they're providing services, free education for generations of deaf Marylanders. Today we have, of course, the superintendent, John Serrano, and the members and coaches of Team Tech Lightning, who have competed not just in this state, but in I think it was in Tennessee, in Knoxville. They were successful everywhere, and for this first season, we just wanted to make sure that they were congratulated and encouraged to keep going. It's terrific work. So, Mr. President.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Maryland School for the Deaf robotics team in recognition of the middle school robotics team earning top rankings and awards at regional and statewide competitions. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 28th day of January, 2025.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the scholars of the Maryland School for the Deaf robotics team, congratulations. The Senate of Maryland congratulates you on your winning and top-ranked robotics team and wish you many more victories ahead. So congratulations. Thank you all so much for joining us. These robotics competitions, too, are something else. I don't know if anybody's seen them. They are, whew, next level, next level. All right, thank you all. Thank you. We also are joined, I believe, in some in the gallery across and maybe behind from College Board students taking AP classes. Do we have the AP students that are with us? Are they in the gallery? Above, behind? On this side, behind me. Okay, excellent. Well, if we could please welcome the AP students. They're here today to advocate, but also excellent scholars taking the tour of Annapolis, so pleased to have you all with us. Other introductions today. Recognized senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a very special guest here on the floor. To my left, we've got Dr. Eugenia Henry, who lives in Potomac, was actually a constituent of the senator from District 16. World-renowned entrepreneur, Mr. President, in the field of bioscience, biomedical work, biomedicine, has founded 3 bioscience-related companies, which have created more than 500 jobs, has submitted 78 new drug applications, 77 of which have been approved by FDA, has donated over 500,000 personal protective equipment items, PPEs, to local governments to assist first responders during the height of COVID, has received numerous worldwide awards. In fact, in 2022, received the White House Lifetime Achievement Award, Mr. President. So with that, give Dr. Henry a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome. Welcome, Dr. Henry. We thank you for your work in the state. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Senator from the 40th District has a guest.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There are some young people in the gallery behind us from Matthew A. Henson Elementary School. I ask that they would please stand. Colleagues, these young people are scholars here in Baltimore City. They attend the Matthew A. Henson Elementary School, but for years, ever since I've been in elected office, there's a young man by the name of Cameron Miles who joined them and exposed young people to this process every single year. And so, colleagues, please join me in welcoming Cameron Miles and the young people from Matthew A. Henson Elementary School.
Welcome, welcome. We are so pleased to have you all. Thanks for joining us today. Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have also up in the gallery certain representatives from the Susan G. Komen Foundation, which, as you all know, the world's leading nonprofit breast cancer organization representing millions of people who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. They're hosting their Advocacy Day of Action today in Maryland, and they are here today to advocate on behalf of the estimated 6,270 people in Maryland who will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and the 830 who will die from this disease this year alone. So let's please welcome them and give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Yes, Senator from Harford and Cecil counties.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're joined today, I don't know if the Secretary has made it over yet, but members of the Maryland Department of Agriculture are in the gallery, and soon to be joined by Secretary Addix if he's not up there yet.
I think they are, yes, right here, right behind you, Senator. Welcome. Welcome. We appreciate our ag community. Thank you all for joining us. All right, any further introductions? Senator from District 2 has an introduction?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery today, we have some folks that came down from the western part of the state. The Wellspring Christian Family Schools are here with us today. So if everyone could give them a warm welcome, that'd be great.
Excellent. Welcome to Wellspring. Welcome. Very good. Anything further? Anything further? If not, so we consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We've got Senate introduction calendar number 21. Clerk will read the bills.
Senate Bill 609, Senator Love, residential leases, use of algorithmic device by landlord to determine rent, prohibition, judicial proceedings.
Majority leader moves so we consider the reading of the bills. We have Senate bond calendar number 12. Clerk will read the bond initiative.
Number 1, Senator McKay, Orleans Volunteer Fire Company Building, Budget and Taxation.
All right, the bill will be referred to the Capital Budget Subcommittee. We have a report number 1 from the Committee on Finance. Report number 1, clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 4, Senator Hayes, Economic Development, West North Avenue Development Authority, alterations, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 4 is an emergency measure that alters the composition, powers, and duties of the West North Avenue Development Authority, also known as WNADA. It establishes that WNADA is a body politic and corporate and an instrumentality of the state and makes the authority permanent. The bill also creates a special fund to carry out the purposes of WNADA, creates a board of directors for WNADA, generally consisting of existing WNADA members, and exempts WNADA from specific provisions of state law. Generally, the bill modifies the statutory structure of the authority to more closely align it to that of a state economic development authority. The governor may include each year in the state budget bill an appropriation to WNADA. Amendment 1 excludes owner-occupied residential properties from WNADA's eminent domain authority as established by the bill. I move the amendment and the adoption of a favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? And actually, for the young folks from Matthew Henson, this is the senator's top priority this year about investment in kind of the Penn North area and West North Avenue. So you're getting to see democracy in action in a neighborhood close to Matthew Henson, very close. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion on the amendment? Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the one amendment is adopted. Question now is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 4 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 163, Senator M. Washington, Health, General Article references to mental health, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 163 simply just replaces references to mental hygiene with mental health. And there's an amendment on this bill which just clarifies the department must revise regulations by 9 months to July 1, 2027. There's really no fiscal impact. I move the amendment.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 163 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 222, Chair, Finance Committee, Public Health, Cannabis Public Health Advisory Council, membership, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 222 is a departmental bill. It simply adds the administrator or administrator's designee of the motor vehicles to a member of the Cannabis Public Health Advisory Council. It also makes a technical correction clarifying that it's no longer the Natalie M. LaPrade Medical Cannabis Commission, but the Maryland Cannabis Administration. There's one amendment that adds the executive director or executive director's designee for the Office of Social Equity in the Cannabis Administration to the Advisory Council and makes a technical change. No physical impact, no opposition at the committee. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
The floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 222 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 224, Chair, Finance Committee, Opioid-Associated Disease Prevention and Outreach Programs, Appeals, and Membership of Standing Advisory Committee, favorable.
Recognize the senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Senate Bill 224 is a departmental bill that alters the membership of the Standing Advisory Committee on Opioid-Associated Disease Prevention and Outreach Programs, replacing the Deputy Secretary for Public Health Services with the Secretary of Health or the Secretary's designee. Accordingly, the bill shifts the responsibility for chairing the advisory committee and handling any appeals of adverse decisions to operate a program from that Deputy Secretary to the Secretary or the Secretary's designee. There are no amendments, there's no fiscal impact, there was no opposition. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 224 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 231, Chair, Finance Committee, State Government, Public Employees Relations Act, alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the senator from Charles County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 231 is a departmental bill that alters provisions of the Public Employee Relations Act. The bill repeals the condition that a public health concern exists for an exclusive representative to meet with a new employee by video or similar technology. Senate Bill 231 also repeals the requirement that in-person voting for an exclusive representation lasts for a minimum of 10 days. The bill also requires that the Public Employee Relations Board appoints up to 3 deputy directors who are attorneys or become attorneys within 1 year of appointment, rather than 3 deputy directors who have specialized responsibilities related to their own knowledge and experience. There are 2 amendments to the bill. Amendment 1 is technical. Second Amendment strikes a provision in the bill that would have required employee organization members' dues deductions to be automatically terminated upon an organization ceasing to be exclusive representative of the bargaining unit employees. There is no fiscal impact of this bill. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of a favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 231 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 2. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 9, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Maryland Higher Education Commission, Academic Program Approval and Revisions, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you could indulge me, a little background, I think, for this is very important. So our Maryland Higher Education Commission, MHEC, serves as the state's higher ed coordinating board. It's responsible for establishing state policies for our public and private colleges and universities. So this includes jurisdiction over reviewing new program approvals at our state's higher education institutions. And so that process has come under scrutiny a few years ago, particularly when it came to the issue of program duplication, particularly between our 4 HBCUs and other institutions. And so in 2023, we created by legislation a work group, program approval work group, to review those procedures, which resulted in a report that was issued in 2024, February 2024. And so during the 2024 session, the work group co-chairs cross-filed bills last session to basically memorialize MHEC's program approval process and adopt the recommendations that came from that work group. And so as a result of that, the EEE committee passed a bill, House passed a bill, we came together with a conference committee compromise report, which came to the floor on sine die. And on sine die, we adopted in this body 47-0, a conference committee report, same thing over in the House side. But after that, we realized that there was a bit of a discrepancy between the conference committee report language and what was intended, and there was a scramble to try to put a corrective bill back on the floor, a corrective conference committee report on the floor. We ran out of time by midnight, and that's why we have this emergency bill, SB 9. So as introduced, it's intended to do and align with what was intended in the conference committee report on sine die, which passes body 47-0. So that's what the bill did. The House did request 1 additional clarifying amendment, which we've adopted onto this bill. So with all that background, Mr. President, let me just, in a nutshell, this emergency bill requires private nonprofit institutions of higher education to submit semi-annual letters of intent to the Maryland Higher Education Commission, identifying new graduate level programs they plan to propose within the next 6 months to 2 years, aligning with the process required of public 4-year institutions. The bill also repeals provisions granting 5 specified institutions of higher education exclusive authority to propose emerging workforce needs programs for a specified period of time. They're by putting all the institutions on the same footing. Finally, Mr. President, the bill clarifies the requirements for updates to the state plan for higher education. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Number 2, clarifies that an institution's inclusion of intended program in a letter of intent does not give the institution a right to first refusal to the program. Repeals the requirement that MHEC circulate the letters of intent received from all the institutions among the institutions. And finally, Mr. President, MHEC is required to review the received letters of intent to determine if an intended program is similar to an existing program or other intended programs, is authorized to reach out to the affected institutions to provide feedback or encourage collaboration between the institutions. So, Mr. President, this again is intended, this corrective emergency bill, to just align with what we intended to do on sine die in the conference committee report. No fiscal impact, no opposition, and I'd move the favorable committee report and the 2 committee amendments, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The chair moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 9 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 238, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Department of Housing and Community Development, Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program, Local Rehabilitation Program Administration, favorable.
Recognizing the Vice Chair as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a departmental bill brought by the Department of Housing and Community Development. It simply adds nonprofit organizations to the list of who can be involved in rehab programs for our housing stock in our communities. Right now it's counties and cities, but nonprofits are really good at this as well. There was no fiscal implication, no opposition, and it passed unanimously. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 238 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 251, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Maryland Public Ethics Law, Training and Financial Disclosure Requirements, Revisions, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This departmental bill clarifies that required financial disclosure statements by officials and candidates for office as state officials include the name and address of any source of compensated employment. The bill removes the requirement that ethics training courses for specified officials and registered lobbyists provided by the State Ethics Commission be at least 2 hours, and clarifies that training courses can be given as online training or in-person presentations. The amendment specifies which topics must be included in training on the Maryland Public Ethics Law provided to state employees and certain lobbyists by the State Ethics Commission. I move adoption of the favorable committee report, the 1 amendment.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 251 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to Budget and Tax. This is report number 1. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 36, Senator Kagan, Public Safety 911 Trust Fund 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline, favorable.
Recognize the senator from St. Mary's as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 36, Public Safety, the 911 Trust Fund 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline, authorizes the use of the 911 Trust Fund to include and provide funding for costs related to the operation of the 988 hotline that may be shared with the 911 activities. There were no amendments, unanimous in the committee. I move for the adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 36 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Before we go to the next one, I think we have some House pages. We'd like to welcome the House pages who are joining us today. Thanks for joining us here in the Senate. Welcome. All right. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 41, Senator Rosa Pepp, Maryland Small Business Retirement Savings Board membership alterations, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill deals with the Maryland Small Business Retirement Savings Program, which we set up several years ago to help the 50% of Marylanders that have no retirement savings program at work. It's off to a good start. Many people have helped. The senator from the 10th District and I serve on the board. This bill adds the controller to the board. Currently, there are 3 members appointed by the Speaker, 3 appointed by the Governor, 3 appointed by the President, plus the Treasurer and the Secretary of Labor. This would add the controller. And I just want to say that the controller's office over the past 2 years has been incredibly helpful in getting the program off the ground, because they have relations with businesses, small businesses, that allow them to help us get the word out about this opportunity for business to help their employees. There are no amendments. There was no debate. It was unanimous. I move the report. Favorable
All right,
report.
the floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Wish I had gotten the advice to start saving earlier. You know, that's the whole point. All right, on the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 41 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 86, Senator Waldstreicher, online sports wagering, problem gambling, resources, required contact information, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Montgomery as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 86, colleagues, addresses problem gaming. Right now, if someone wants to access problem gaming, they usually get a telephone number. This just provides access through a landing page. There's no opposition, passed out of Budget and Taxation unanimously. There were 2 committee amendments. The first is makes changes to the purpose paragraph. The second is technical. I would move the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Thank you for that very clear explanation. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 86 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 183, Chair, Budget and Taxation Committee, State Department of Assessments and Taxation, notification of constant yield tax rate repeal, favorable.
Recognizing the majority leader as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 183 is a departmental bill for the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. It repeals the requirement that they calculate the constant yield tax rate for each taxable year and notify each jurisdiction of its constant yield tax rate. There are no committee amendments, and I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 183 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to judicial proceedings. This is calendar number 2. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 123, Senator Simon Nair, boating accident, duty to remain at the scene, render assistance, and provide information, penalties, favorable.
Recognized senator from District 30 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill has no amendments. It is adopted in the committee report. What the bill does is requires operators of vessels in a collision, accident, or other casualty that result in bodily injury or death to another person to stop that vessel as close as possible, return and remain at the scene until the operator renders assistance and provide information. The bill establishes criminal penalties for failure to comply with these requirements and establishes a specific penalty for failure to comply with the existing duty to render aid and provide identifying information at the boating accident.
All right.
Move the favorable report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Thank you for that. Recognize the senator from District 29 has a question for the floor leader.
Yes, and if I could ask a question to the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
I am curious to know if there are any exceptions in this dealing with weather when we talk about the condition of the Chesapeake Bay and where the accident occurred. This is very similar when we talk about accidents. This is very similar to what we have on the roads that say when there's an accident, you need to stay there. When you're 6 miles out in the Chesapeake Bay and it's nighttime and the wind is rather brisk and it might not be safe for anyone involved to be there, I just wanted to make sure that there's an exception in this law so that we can go ahead and we don't end up with additional victims for saying, well, we're going to put you in jail if you don't, if you leave the scene of a boating accident.
Thank you for your question, Senator. I don't know that the bill has specific exceptions, but what it does apply is a reasonableness standard. So if the weather would unreasonably prevent someone from being able to remain at the scene or return to the scene safely, that reasonableness factor is built into the intent of the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Any further questions for the floor leader? If not, question is on the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 123 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 180, Senator West, Public Safety Handgun Permits Expiration and Renewal Periods for Retired Law Enforcement Officers, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill alters the expiration and renewal periods for a handgun permit issued to a retired law enforcement officer who retired in good standing from service with a law enforcement agency of the state or a county or a municipal corporation. Under the bill, the retired law enforcement officers would only have to renew their permits every 5 years instead of every 3 years as at present. There was a unanimous committee vote on this bill. There are no committee amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 180 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 199, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Criminal Procedure, Sexual Assault Exam and Treatment, Reimbursement, favorable.
Recognize the senator from Montgomery County is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a departmental bill that clarifies that specified healthcare entities that provide services to victims of sexual assault are entitled to be paid by the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy rather than the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. There are no amendments. Move the committee favorable report.
All right, the floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 199 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got our brand new floor reporters come down to JPR. Well done, well done. All right, stay with judicial proceedings. Report number 3. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 142, Senator Sidnor, Marriage Confidential Communication, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 142 is a bill that establishes that a spouse who is the alleged victim is competent to disclose a confidential communication between spouses occurring during their marriage in a criminal action in which one spouse is charged with a crime against the other spouse. However, please note that the spouse may not be compelled to testify to that confidential communication. The vote on the committee was unanimous. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 142 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 184, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Charitable Organizations, Late Fees and Registration, Suspension and Cancellation Requirements, favorable.
Recognizing Senator from Baltimore County is the floor leader.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 184 is a departmental bill which authorizes the Secretary of State to suspend or waive late filing fees for charitable organizations and establishes related regulations. This bill establishes that a late fee may not be considered delinquent and thus the charity's debt be sent to central collection. This was voted on unanimously, favorably by the committee. There were no committee amendments. Mr. President, I move a favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 184 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 187, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Drunk Driving, Commercial Driver's Licenses, Disqualification from Driving, favorable.
Recognizing the senator from the 34th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a departmental bill, and it aligns Maryland with federal law and mandates that the state disqualify any individual from driving a commercial motor vehicle for 1 year when the individuals found to have driven under the influence of alcohol. There were no amendments. It had a unanimous vote, and I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 187 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 197, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Maryland Correctional Training Commission, membership, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a departmental bill. It expands the membership of the Correctional Training Commission to the Director of the Division of Parole and Probation within the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, as well as an employee of the Division of Parole and Probation. There are 2 amendments, Mr. President. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds the employee of the division of the commission. I'd move for the adoption of the favorable committee report and the 2 committee amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any amendments? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 197 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 203, Chair, Judicial Proceedings, Vehicle Laws, Exceptional Hauling Permits for Farm Products, favorable.
Exceptional hauling, not just hauling, exceptional.
Very special.
Yes, recognize the senator from the 34th is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This departmental bill simplifies and modifies the requirements for and permissions associated with exceptional hauling permits issued by the SHA to haul farm products. There's 1 amendment as sponsors. We move for the adoption of the amendment and the favorable report, which was unanimously voted on in JPR.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 203 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. That does it. The desk is clear. We'll have a pro forma tomorrow. Committees will be working hard. We'll get notices from committees in just a moment. We'll also have a pro forma on Friday, but note, I think we also have some activities on Friday. We're going to be doing some excellent work for Special Olympics, hopefully. We'll have a number of participants from the Senate joining. I hear the majority leader is going to be joining us this year. All right, let's hear from the Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance will meet at 1 o'clock today for 10 bill hearings, 64 witnesses. We're on a roll.
Ooh.
Thank you.
In it. Thank you. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today at 1 p.m. we're going to get a fiscal briefing from Department of Legislative Services. 1:30, a briefing on the Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts. And then immediately followed, we've got 10 bill hearings on environmental bills. Tomorrow, so we have a pro forma. 1 p.m. we're going to have a briefing on K through 12 education in the blueprint, followed at 2:30 by 10 bills entirely on education policy.
Excellent, excellent. Busy day. Budget and tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today at 11:15, we will have a relatively short voting session. And then tomorrow, we will have at 10:30 bill hearings.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll commence with bill hearings today at 1 o'clock, and then tomorrow we'll start off at 10 a.m.
All right. Today at 1, tomorrow at 10. Yes, Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I forgot to mention that on Wednesday we'll also start at 1 o'clock with another 10 bills. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Busy, busy. Let's see. Any other standing committees? Select committees, joint committees, or delegations? Chair of the Howard County delegation?
Howard County delegation will be meeting after the floor session on Thursday in the Silver Room.
Excellent. Any other? Yes, Chair of Charles County delegation?
Black Caucus.
Black Caucus, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland will meet in person on Thursday, 8:15. Breakfast is being served in the House Office Building, the Baltimore City Room.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, recognizing the Senator from the Lower Eastern Shore.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I was
would like my colleagues to join me in welcoming a couple guests.
Please.
Judy and Kelly Kennan that have traveled up from Salisbury, Maryland, to watch the proceedings in the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee today in support of a bill that would have bring qualifications and training to child custody evaluators, and they're making a special effort to be here in support of that legislation.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Senator, Veterans Caucus?
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Veteran Caucus will be meeting tomorrow, January 29th at 8 a.m. in person in the House Office Building, Baltimore City Delegation Room, number 150. Light refreshments will be served. Our honorary speaker will be Secretary Anthony Woods, the Department of Veterans and Military Families. Now, after the meeting, the Secretary Woods, along with Platoon 22, will be leading a tour of the Faces of 22 portrait display. Platoon 22, a nonprofit in Frederick, constructed a Faces of 22 portrait display on the 3rd floor of the House building, the hall that runs from Officer 310 through 326. The display highlights 22 active duty or veterans who died by suicide and who are also had a connection with Maryland. This exhibit will run for the duration of the session. Platoon 22 staff plans to visit along with a few surviving families. The name Platoon 22 reflects the alarming statistics that, on average, 22 veterans die by suicide each day. The organization focuses on raising awareness, providing resources, and creating programs to support veterans struggling with mental health challenges, including post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and other related issues. Thanks, Mr. President.
Thanks. And where was that exhibit, Senator?
It's going to be in the Baltimore City Delegation Room, number 150.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent.
Oh, the exhibit is going to be in the House building on the hallway that runs from offices 310 through 326.
3rd floor. Okay, perfect.
3rd floor,
I'll
yes.
swing by. Thank you. Thank you
you.
for that. All right. Yes, Senator from Hartford and Cecil.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we'll be pro forma tomorrow on behalf of the Hartford County Senate delegation, I just wanted to let everybody know that tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Calvert House will be Hartford County Night, and everyone's welcome.
Excellent. Hartford County Night tomorrow evening. Thank you. Yes, Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow morning at the Neal Room, we have our Bible study, and we'd like for everybody to come if they could. And at the same time, Mr. President, we're going to be having our prayer breakfast coming up. We'll have a date, and we'll have a flyer. We will be putting it in everybody's mailer. We love for everybody to come. We just need a head count if you would like to come, because it is free. So thank you, Mr. President.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator. Senator from District 7, Chair of the Splash.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I got up last night, talked about the polar bear plunge, but now that we have most of our listening audience here in the offices, I wanted to bring it up again that we will be plunging this year. Right now, it's myself and the Senate President. Talked about those that plunged last year, including the senator that proudly represents Gaithersburg and Rockville. We've had other people that plunged. I want to say the Senate Secretary's office, they were courageously there, including staff. Mr. President, your staff plunged. I was proud of them. So this year we're trying to get staff involved. You know, I've heard that the chairman of the Capital Budget, I heard your chief of staff's probably going to plunge. Probably fake news, but who knows? We'll try to get her there. You know, the president said, I think, Majority Leader, you plunging?
That's the word.
That's, wow. Again, CNN, fake news there. But anyway, what's interesting this year, we've had a cold snap. And Mr. President, I think you reported on Friday, 60% of the bay north of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge is frozen. And I looked up, we looked up in my office, this time last year, the Chesapeake Bay temperature at Sandy Point State Park was 47.4 degrees. You know what it is right now? 33.2 degrees.
It's going to be glorious.
Woo, baby, it's going to be nice out there. So anyway, again, we're looking for people that want to jump in with us. It is a fundraiser. We will have donation pages there. You know, it's a great opportunity. We are not here tomorrow. We will be working in committees. We will be on pro forma, but please, if you're interested, donate. If not, if you want to plunge, come out with us. Even if you want to cheer us on, like hopefully the majority leader will. But with that, Mr. President, thank you for your time. Hoping to get some people out there to help us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Special Olympics, great cause. It's a truly, it's a great, great cause. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Anything else? If not, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 44 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Before recognizing the majority leader, just a quick note, Senator from the 45th and the Senator from the 40th actually brought this up in our caucus today, but for everyone's benefit, the Senator from the 45th is the Senate's representative for former Senator McFadden, who has a park being dedicated in his honor today. So he is representing the Senate and just very proud to be able to do that for Senator McFadden. He worked really hard in that EBDI area, and that park is a great honor. So yes, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Wednesday, January 29th for a pro forma session at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe. Have a wonderful day, everyone.